it does present itself as being something that's predominantly middle-aged, middle class, white. Yeah, I think if you're wanting to kind of engage with BIPOC, it's really important to. I was thinking about this, and I actually thought about the kind of heritage of making that there is in my family. So my grandfather made furniture, my dad made furniture, my dad made shoes, my mum used to sew and tat and crochet. And the idea is funny because I asked you earlier how you defined heritage crafts, and I guess it depends on whose heritage you're looking at. And it's almost as though when I first heard of the Heritage Crafts Association, it could well have just had English Heritage Crafts Association attached to it, because it does still strike me as something that is predominantly English or white and middle class and middle aged, and that's not a criticism of you personally. It's just the image that it presents itself. So I guess.
But I think if there were historical, so I'm thinking about, we've got Rose Sinclair here with us, and she's done a lot of work around the Dorcas societies, which is her heritage and her mother's heritage, and that's here. So they are English, British things.
We don't seem to kind of know. It's just not. We don't kind of tend to see a lot of Rose's. I mean, there's a lot of people who don't know who Rose Sinclair is, and I don't know how you would kind of address that.
Everybody, when they travel in cloth, and they bring those pieces of cloth with them that mean something. So whether it's that crochet or that knitting or that sewing, but it allowed me to look back. So how did my mum learn to sew? How did Granny then learn to sew? How did great Granny then learn to sew?
Yeah.
So it's allowed me to trace us backwards and then find us forwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's really important to note that there are new designers coming forward. There are people that are using that heritage factor in their work. So if you look at Laduma Maxoza and how he uses the heritage in his signature knitting, I mean, it's like blows your mind.
Yeah, because he learned from his mother, didn't he?
He learned from his mother, but he also he's very much rooted within the heritage of his culture, very much rooted in the sustainability model and a sustaining model. And I think it's, when you look at the way that we use crochet, or the way that how you make that crochet starch, it's not just, you don't just go and buy the starch off the shelf, you use cassava, or you might use a rice flour. So we talk about these sustaining models, but it's important that we understand how heritage moves and how heritage is developed. And if I picked up a history of knitting book in England, I don't see myself represented. So I think your work allows us now to look at the narrative of British knitting and say, well, actually from the 1940s, or even before, because we know that Black people were here before that time, we can start to think about, are there possibilities to start putting in those narratives where Black people make a change. So if we look at the book Small Island, that Andrea Levy, she writes the bit where the two protagonists are sitting in the dorm and they're knitting, and she based this on her own life story. So this notion that within literature we are told how Black women can knit, so we can use those stories to re-engage where we sit. So that's kind of me in a bit. I hope that works, Katie.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Thanks, Rose. And I think it's really important that, that heritage, your heritage, is now British heritage, because you bought it, it's here now. So it becomes part of all our history, and it should be reflected in the books. And it just isn't, is it, at the moment? So we've got a bit of work to do.